Skylar Reidel of Reidel Law Firm has commissioned this video to give international business leaders an information advantage for 2024, and I intend to give you an information advantage I don't think you would have heard anywhere else, so stay tuned. Let me start by saying that the world that we lived in 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the world we grew up in, was a far simpler world. Everyone had their jobs, they had their roles in society, they had their sports team, they had their supermarket food, they had their hairdresser, and on the weekends they did their gardening, they read their newspapers, and they went about their day, okay? The world was more or less like that. But there were weird little whispers. There were whispers from the alternative spiritual practice community in somewhere like California. There were whispers from weird ghost hunters and conspiracy theorists or alien hunters or crop circle chasers, whispering to the world, hey, there might be something pretty weird out there. You should check it out. But those whispers were remarkably easy to ignore, easy to gaslight, and easy to just deny and turn away from. And why wouldn't they be? The world worked. Everything was simple. It was straightforward. You did your job. You went forward. It was easy peasy. You didn't need to worry about a crop circle appearing in Wiltshire or some kind of ghost thing. It didn't fit with everything. Everything went on. Now, I know you all remember that world. And you'll also remember that as time went on, that world started to fracture. For example, the Gulf of Tonkin episode, which started the Vietnam War. I mean, it was an escalation, but let's just run with it for rhetorical succinctness. There was the ship called the USS Maddox in the Gulf of Tonkin. The North Vietnamese were alleged to have blown it up, and then because of that act of aggression, the Americans come in and had this horrible bloody war. It was a bloody disaster. Thing is, it never happened. The USS Maddox was never there and never got blown up. Complete lie. People didn't know it was a lie, and people didn't know that the government lied about them like that. The term false flag operation wasn't even in the lexicon back then. Maybe in some deep state, intelligence service manual it was. But you go ask someone in 1995 what a false flag attack is. No one knew. Take 9/11. Speaking of false flag attacks, take 9/11. Everything about that whole thing was a complete lie. Building 7 went down by itself. The Pentagon wasn't hit by a plane; it was hit by a little missile or something like that. And then where the plane should have been, all the building was intact. The most sophisticated air defense system in the whole world, the U.S. Air Force, was shut down with a drill for the exact same thing for that duration until about 1 minute after the last plane hit, and then all right, I guess we better turn it back on again now the attack's already done. Same thing happened in the 7/7 attacks, the 7/7 bombings at Tavistock Square in London, by the way. And then precipitated a war on terror, which lasted something like 15 years, ruined America's reputation ever. There were no weapons of mass destruction, loads of bollocks, and American civil liberties, which were the foundation of that beautiful culture, were eroded away with the Patriot Act. And the intelligence service was built up, ready to be weaponized against all these terrorists and stuff, which later got turned in on its own population. Like the Federal Reserve, when we grew up, even though it was commonly out there, no one knew that the Federal Reserve was owned by private, shadowy banker people that no one really knows. Everyone just thought it was federal. It was a reserve of money that was kind of owned by the people, a bit like the post office or something like that. Most people now know that it's owned by a private banking cartel. Same with the City of London. No one knew that was owned by a private interest, or even that it was this own weird shadowy entity that was separate from the rest of London that all of us have sadly visited. I don't like London. I think it's a bit of a shithole. But anyway, the point is, the City of London. No one knew that was a separate entity. In that flat, basic plastic world, not plastic, like straightforward, simple, prefabricated world that we all grew up in, ladies and gentlemen, no one knew that there was a shadowy blackmail operation going on with the rich and famous in regards to Jimmy Savile in the UK or Jeffrey Epstein in America. And those are tip of the icebergs, by the way. There's plenty more of them that never got caught. We found out, for example, that Ted Heath, one of the UK's prime ministers, was connected to Savile. And there's enough evidence to basically put an investigation out on him now that the guy was a known paedophile. Jimmy Savile had the highest clearance for Buckingham Palace for our royal family. Was buddies with now King Charles, and was a procurer of children for the rich and famous, and as a matter of fact was connected to the royal family. No one knew that. No one knew that Epstein run a blackmail operation at Little St James Island, where he got all these actors, all these Hollywood types, all these leaders of industry, all these scientists. They came in, all these politicians. They went in there, did dodgy sex acts, often with kids, and it was recorded. And they even had a branch in the UK, where like the Epstein franchise had a branch in the UK with all these spy cameras and stuff, and they recorded people. The point is, no one knew that. When we were growing up, no one even knew this stuff was possible. 20 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, if you or I were sitting around a dinner table having a polite, lovely dinner or a party with family and friends, and someone spoke up and said, you know what, aliens are real, I think they actually exist, it's not just some weird fictional thing in Hollywood, no, they're real, and they're not only real, they're coming here in flying saucers doing weird stuff. You would have been laughed out of the room. Like, they would have said, mate, you're freaking schizophrenic or something. You can't tell the difference between the shit you see on like Doctor Who or some film or Independence Day and actual reality. You're a nutter. Stuff that you thought was UFOs was weather balloons and swamp gas and shit like that. Go back to sleep. Go 10 years ago. So that was like 20 like the year 2000. 10 years ago, if you said, right, I think aliens exist and all the same stuff, everyone would go, well, like there's 300 billion stars in the galaxy and 300 billion galaxies in the known universe. So I guess aliens must be there, but they're just not coming here so much. So like, the Overton window, you saw the Overton window shifts. Now, I think even in the most like normie families, when this subject is raised, they're like, yeah, there is something there. There's all these UFOs, and we've got these people from the military coming out and having all these testimonies and like Captain Fraber, for example, was a famous guy on Rogan. 20 years ago, no one knew that stuff even existed, but now everyone's kind of talking about it. And it's kind of getting accepted to be talked about. Shortly after the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin came out, and I remember everyone knew it was a scam. Everyone knew it was a Ponzi scheme. Everyone knew it was funny internet money, and I got laughed at so many times for talking about like Bitcoin and all that stuff back then. That was the biggest investment opportunity in the last 15 years, ladies and gentlemen. Laughed at. I remember when Obama, so we had the war on terror, America got done and everyone had enough of like all these pointless wars, weapons of mass destruction, all this pointless death and everything. I remember when Obama came in and said, you know what, I'm going to do change. I'm going to change. And everyone's like, yes, first black president. I'm going to do change. I'm going to believe it. And then what happened when the guy got elected? Fuck all changed. The same deep state politics that made like the degraded America, lost civil liberties, ruined its economy and its reputation, carried forth through the Obama years. Drone strikes went on. The endless wars went on. they remained in Afghanistan and so on and so forth. And then let's talk about the scandemic, ladies and gentlemen, from March 2020. No one knew that, no one in the mainstream knew that it was coming, right? Where, and nothing in that whole narrative was true, was it? It wasn't true that it was going to be 3 weeks to flatten the curve. It wasn't true that, all the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff were going to help everyone and save lives. No, they destroyed lives, they destroyed mental well-being, they destroyed the economy, and that killed people. The virus itself, that they used to justify all these lockdowns, wouldn't have however many millions of deaths that Neil Ferguson said in that bogus phony report, or that its mortality rate was 3.4%, like the World Health Organization said. In the early days of the scamdemic, ladies and gentlemen, everyone when people said, "Oh yeah, I think they're going to give us a DNA injection that's going to modify your genome," all the gaslighting came out. And everyone's like, "No, that's not going to happen. It's a complete lie." That was the thing that came out. And then when some of the people in the conspiracy movement were saying, "Oh, hang on a minute, we think this is going to be a dangerous murder weapon, and so many people are going to die, and there's going to be this massive mortality rate," all the gaslighting came out and said, "No, it's not going to be. It's perfectly safe and effective, safe and effective." That's what they said. You remember all the propaganda? Well, it turns out, recording this at the very beginning of 2024, the insurance actuary numbers have come out. So that, you can't really fake those numbers because that involves insurance payouts. It's estimated that something about 20 million people globally have died from that murder weapon, the injection. 20 million people. Who could have guessed it? The point that I'm getting to with all this rhetoric is twofold. First of all, the world that we grew up in, that flat world, that prefabricated world, where everyone's got their jobs, you've got your newspaper, you go mow your lawn and the rest of it, that world is nothing like the actual world that we live in, okay? And the second point is that all the way through this, as this reality of this spiritual, political, criminal underbelly of humanity starts boiling up uncontrollably, despite all the best denial of the individuals around the planet, and indeed the governments and the corporations and the rest of it, it's bubbling out, and the people, and there was a class of people that saw it coming, and those people were the nutters, the conspiracy people, the woo people. So here we are, and I promised you like some information that's going to give you a business advantage in 2024, and I intend to deliver. Here we are in 2024. The economy is about to shit the bed. I think nearly everyone realizes that now. What the woo people are talking about now, which I don't know if you're available or not, I don't know where you are in this whole thing, is that, look, how can you understand the economy crisis going if you don't understand about the fiat currencies getting detonated? That is to say, dollars and pounds ceasing to exist. Or this is being used as a leverage point to get the central bank digital currencies like introduced into society. Or even, I'm going to take that a step further, or the way that like they plan to take that central bank digital currency and then integrate it with the phone technology that have been building out, and then eventually put that into a microchip. Like, this is the point. Like, if you're just reacting to it, like normie culture always reacts to this stuff, you're not going to see the wider context. Or the migrant crisis. Right now, Europe has been, whether you agree with it or not, Europe has been flooded with migrants that it can't look after. Same with America. The southern border is dissolved, and it's turned into this catapult that facilitates the firing and an acceleration of migrants all around America. Now, if you're not talking about fifth generational war, and you don't have an understanding of like how like the NGOs and the deep state itself like is involved in that, and how they want to get this dialectic going on, where you go, oh, there's the racist white people here, and oh, there's these poor underprivileged brown and black people, and get this problem reaction solution triangulation thing going on, then you're going to get done in with it this year. That's coming. That's here now. It's coming. Or like, for example, last year, like if you weren't listening to the alternative media and looking into like deep state stuff, you'd have believed all that propaganda about how Ukraine was invincible and how Putin was this delusional guy, and he was losing on all fronts, can't even win. It's impossible that he'd win. That's what it was all blasting out on the mainstream media, until eventually they all had to sheepishly admit, oh, okay, actually, yeah, Putin won. You know, Zelensky, Ukraine, they've got no chance now. The woo people were looking into this all the way from the beginning. What are you going to do, ladies and gentlemen, in 2024 when a new COVID comes out, a new strain, and all that bizarreness starting again, when everyone's like, yeah, we've got to do masks? It's happening, by the way. Some blue cities in America, it's happening now. Certain institutions globally are starting to say, yeah, we need to mask up, we need to get ready again. What are you going to do when a new strain and all that comes again? How are you going to decipher all the propaganda that's coming out? 15 years ago, people like life coaches, or no, let me rephrase that. 15 years ago, cutting edge companies were looking to wellness professionals, psychologists, kind of gurus and stuff, and they were getting them in to give like nutritional packages to their workers, to give wellness packages to them, to get them out on staff training days and team building days and that kind of thing, to do like psychological analysis where they do all the Myers-Briggs and Maslow's hierarchy of needs and enneagrams and stuff like that to like profile psychologically and maybe even spiritually all their customers. Not customers, the staff. The real cutting edge ones were getting their C-suite and taking them off to ayahuasca retreats as extra big team building things. And it's cool. And you know, 15 years ago, that stuff was cutting edge. I think I think the way that people like Silicon Valley, businesses in Silicon Valley, looked after their employees is a great example of what that stuff is. But that's old hat now. I mean, definitely have it. If you haven't got that stuff for your business, maybe consider getting it, right? But that is old hat. What's going to make a massive difference to your business, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what I'm getting to with this whole thing, is the underbelly of weirdness, of exopolitics, of corruption, of criminality, of a spiritual explosion, of a psycho-spiritual renaissance that's boiling away on this planet right now, is bubbling up like a volcano. That's what's happening in 2024. And that not only is a impactful thing to your business, it's the very context that your businesses are living in. Just like in 2020, like COVID, the scamdemic, like that was a context that you were all operating in. So too is this psycho-spiritual cultural explosion that we're going through right now, and is only accelerating and accelerating and accelerating, going to be the very context that you all swim in with your business. So my point to you is to make you aware of this, ladies and gentlemen, to make you aware of the dangers that are going to come with that. Like, if you're not prepared for this psycho-spiritual, cultural renaissance, that's explosion that's going to come, then like, you're going to get done in by it, just like the businesses that weren't prepared for when things like the scamdemic happened. But equally, if you're not ready for the opportunities, the best opportunities that any of us are going to see in our lifetime are happening right now. And so if you're not aware of it, you're not going to be able to take the opportunities either. And there's a third thing that I wanted to leave you with here, ladies and gentlemen. All these things, from Obama being full of shit, to like, the Gulf of Tonkin being a psyop, to 9/11 being an inside job, and the rest of it, right? And on and on and on. To aliens not being swamp gas and weather balloons and the rest of it, and actually being this intriguing, massive meta story that I'm not going to talk about too much, because this is an information video. There were always people on the cutting end, on the bleeding edge, looking out into the weirdness and drawing it in and saying, "Here, look at this, look at this." Yeah, all right. Some of them are nutters, like chasing Bigfoot and looking at flat Earth. Maybe even Bigfoot's real. I don't fucking know. Who knows what's real anymore? But this is my point. Like, in a world where no one really knows what's real anymore, not just from propaganda and psyops and stuff, but from real stuff coming in, like the dramatic increase in UFO sightings that's happening now, like the economy about to shit the bed, like the migrant crisis, like the ocean of propaganda that we all live in. It's the people on the bleeding edge of reality that draw in stuff from the woo that are going to be the ones, just like they have been in all these previous examples, that are going to be able to make sense of this stuff. So the final piece of advice I want to leave you with in this video is, ladies and gentlemen, business leaders around the world, is get ready for the woo. Prepare for the challenges it's going to offer you, because it will be the business environment that you swim in this year. Get ready to take advantage of the opportunities that come. And if you want to understand this thing and not just get crushed by the lies and projections and the bollocks that comes with all this stuff, and actually work out some truth about what's going on with this thing, look to the people who have a track record for getting stuff right that really impacted us over the last 10, 20, 30 years. Look to the woo people. So my final piece of advice to you, hilariously, for 2024, ladies and gentlemen, is, if you want cutting edge advice in your business and you want a business advantage no other people have, find an effective conspiracy theorist and go hire them, because boy oh boy are you going to need them.